Hey guys, tonight we slip into the splintered silence of a medieval dawn, cold air licking your cheeks through the cracks in a wooden wall, the scent of old hay damp wool, and something faintly fungal. Shadows stretch across the uneven floorboards, and your entire body itches in places you didn't know existed. You blink awake on a straw mattress that's more alive than you are crawling with fleas, scratchy with old grain husks, and generously seasoned with rodent droppings from the rafters above. You sit up slowly, stiff from another night, curled like a worm in your grimy blanket. It's less of a blanket and more of a stiffened pelt, crusted from years of sweat mud and unspeakable spills. The good news? You survived the night. The bad news? So did everything else. There are no curtains here. No windows either, just slits in the wall that let in a sliver of gray light and all the cold air it can carry. The wooden boards under your bare feet groan as you stand. You step carefully, not because you're worried about splinters, though you should be, but because your uncle's feet are poking out from under a burlap sack in the corner. You don't want to trip and accidentally kick the one man in your house who might be holding on to your only knife. You look around at your one-room kingdom, a fire pit gone cold, 3 adults snoring, 2 children sleep whimpering, 1 chicken, pecking at something mysterious in the ash, and a goat that somehow managed to climb halfway onto your brother. Welcome to the medieval open concept floor plan. All family, all livestock, all night. The church bell tolls in the distance, a metal clang that slices through the morning like a dull axe. It's your alarm clock, assuming you needed one after a night spent battling both vermin and your cousin's elbows. You shuffle toward the door, careful not to step on the cat. Not out of kindness, but because the last time someone stepped on it, it bit them, and that toe turned black. Outside, the air smells like frost chimney smoke, and something more pungent wafting from the nearby midden heap. You stretch wincing, your back cracks in 3 places. You're 16, by the way. You scan the surroundings, a few thatched roofs crooked and sagging like old men, mud paths, frosty grass. Someone's already dumping slop into a pig pen nearby. The pig looks at you like it knows something you don't. It probably does. Pigs in 1325 are both your garbage disposal and occasionally your neighbor's last meal. Depending on how things go this week, you may be one or the other. Your stomach growls, but you'll have to earn that sadness later. Right now, you need to go relieve yourself, which is its own cursed journey. But we'll get there soon. For now, just take in this first terrible breath of the day. You pull your threadbare tunic tighter, it's wool. But that doesn't mean warm. It's coarse and itchy, dyed some vague shade between muddy pond and dead squirrel. It smells like wet dog and last week's smoke. You tied it with a bit of twine. Actual belt, that's a noble's luxury. Your breath fogs in front of you. Somewhere nearby, a rooster screams its morning curse. You glance at the sky. The sun is barely trying. It's as if even the heavens aren't convinced this day is worth the effort. As you trudge toward the latrine, one flea decides to take a bite out of your neck. You slap at it, miss, and grumble under your breath. You'd curse, but this is medieval Europe swearing, could get you a fine or worse a scolding from old Agnes, the neighbor, who somehow knows when you sin. And trust me, she's listening. You step over a puddle that may or may not be half urine and nearly twist your ankle on a rock. That's when it hits you. Your entire life is going to be uphill from here, and not in the inspirational way. More like uphill in the muddy, soul-crushing blister on your soul sense. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You scratch your head absently and feel something wiggle. You freeze. Maybe it's best not to investigate. Welcome to 1325. You shuffle down the narrow path toward what passes for your bathroom, though bathroom is a misleading term, really. There's no bath, there's no room, just a shallow pit dug behind a rotting fence where modesty goes to die. The earth is hard from frost, and every step makes your knees click like poorly oiled hinges. You're not old. Your joints are just overworked and underappreciated. Nature is calling, but not in a friendly tone. It's more of a scream now, a frantic stomach-turning reminder that you had beans last night. You pick up the pace, weaving around puddles and frozen manure piles, because, yes, the pigs are free-range and extremely expressive. As you turn the corner, you lock eyes with a goose. Not just any goose, the goose. The one that's been watching you for weeks. It honks, flaps its wings aggressively, and blocks your path to relief. You consider negotiation or violence, but ultimately you just go wide, choosing dignity over confrontation. Barely. Finally, there it is, a splintering wooden plank over a hole that smells like failure and cabbage. This, dear listener, is your medieval toilet. No privacy, no ventilation, and definitely no toilet paper. There's a communal rag nailed to a post, washed allegedly in the same creek where people rinse laundry-filled drinking jugs and occasionally dump animal guts. You crouch careful not to touch anything, which is laughable because the cold hits first, then the stink. Then the realization that there is no worse place to contemplate life's decisions than over a pit of communal waste. A slight wind picks up and brushes you behind, refreshing in a masochistic sort of way. You try to make it quick, but your neighbor Gertrude is already at the fence chatting with her sister, and of course commenting loudly about your timing. "Up early today, aren't we?" she cackles. You smile weakly. This is the 14th time she's seen your bare backside. That's more than your spouse will, assuming you get one. Historians still argue whether these communal latrines helped foster tight-knit communities or just deeply traumatized generations of villagers. Either way, you're not exactly feeling the brotherhood of man right now. You finish up, tug your tunic back down, and shuffle back toward the hut. Your breath clouds again. The goose is gone, likely to plan its next ambush. Your gut has calmed temporarily, but now the cold has crept under your skin, and set up camp. You'd give anything for a hot shower, or a lukewarm one, or even just a private corner with a bush and some dignity. Back home, you find your little brother poking at the cold ashes in the hearth, trying to rekindle yesterday's fire with a twig and sheer optimism. Your mother is already up pouring water into a dented iron pot. She's humming the same tuneless melody she always does when she's about to serve despair in a bowl. You sit near the hearth legs tucked under you, hoping for warmth. The goat steps on your foot. You don't flinch. You're used to pain by now. And this dear traveler of time is the part of the day where you start missing modern bathrooms, not just the toilet or the paper or the heated seat, but the door, the one that closes, the one that locks, the one that gives you 2 minutes to be alone with your thoughts and not a single chicken staring into your soul. The fire catches with a puff of smoke that stings your eyes. You blink against the tears and think of how soft toilet paper must feel, how it must gently cradle modern people in their hour of need, like the warm embrace of an angel wearing cashmere gloves. You sneeze hard. Something lands in your lap. It might be part of your soul trying to escape. Outside, a cart rattles down the path. It's the dung collector. Bless his grim profession. He's followed by 2 dogs and a smell that defies language. You pull your cloak tighter, not because it helps, but because it's the only gesture you have left. You lean against the wall, eyes closing for a second, when a sudden shriek of laughter erupts outside. Kids already barefoot and rolling a wooden hoop down the lane. One trips and face plants in a puddle. He laughs, stands, and keeps running. You marvel at his energy and his immune system. Some say children in medieval times were treated like miniature adults. Others argue they were just very short workers with no rights. But here they are, playing before work, dirty, loud, resilient. You glance down at your hands, mud-stained, chapped, and raw. The sun's not even up fully yet. You survived the latrine? Barely. But the day is just getting started. You've got work to do, a thin soup to pretend as food, and an outfit that could double as sandpaper. So far, 1325 is not impressed with you, and you're starting to agree with it. The pot by the hearth begins to hiss, and with it, the scent of, well, something. It's hard to describe. Imagine wet cardboard, boiled turnip skin, and a faint suggestion of foot. This, dear viewer, is breakfast, the infamous medieval pottage. You ladle it into your wooden bowl and try not to gag. Pottage is the food of the people, not because it's beloved, but because it's literally all they've got. A gluey stew of barley or oats thickened with water and thickened further with despair. You squint into the mix and see a limp piece of something root-like. Parsnip turnip. Yesterday's error. Who knows? If you're lucky, it's a vegetable. If you're not well, let's not ruin the only meal of the day by speculating too hard. You sit cross-legged by the hearth, scooping mush into your mouth. It's lukewarm, grainy, and tastes like yesterday's rainwater. But it fills your stomach in the same way stuffing fills a mattress functional, but no one's writing love poems about it. Your little sister eats beside you, slurping noisily. She's 5 and already has the resigned expression of someone who knows this is it. There are no pancakes, no syrup, no breakfast sausage sizzling on a griddle. Just this beige slop and the unspoken family tradition of pretending it's fine. Outside, a rooster crows again off key and with far too much energy. You hear the rattle of wagon wheels, the low moan of oxen pulling their weight for another day of tilling, and somewhere, someone already yelling about taxes. Welcome to morning in the village where breakfast is barely edible and someone is always shouting. You toss your empty bowl aside. It's not even your own, just the one least stained with soot. As you rise, the wooden floor creaks underfoot, and the smell of burning rushlights mingles with the sour tang of sweat and wet wool. You wrap your cloak tighter and duck outside to begin your day. There's a light frost coating the path now, and your shoes are what passes for them do nothing to stop the chill. They're made from stitched scraps of leather and hope. One sole flaps with every step, like it's trying to escape your life before you do. You pass the neighbor's hut, Agnes, the ever-watchful, ever-nosy prophet of judgment. She's already outside tossing feed to her chickens, who appear better fed than most villagers. She sees you and offers a disapproving grunt. You're not sure what you did this time, but she'll tell you at Mass. As you head toward the fields, your stomach begins its protest. That bowl of pottage has activated something unholy. You clench and pray it's not a return visit to the latrine. Not today. Not again. Up ahead, you see the blacksmith's son dragging a wheelbarrow with one hand, using the other to mop blood from his nose. You don't ask. Medieval childhood is a full contact sport. If he's walking, he's winning. You reach the village green, where a few vendors are already setting up baskets of shriveled apples, bundles of herbs, stale bread hunks, and something unidentifiably brown in a jar. A woman calls out to you, 3 pennies for boiled leeks. You don't have 3 pennies. You don't even have one. But you smile politely and keep walking, because leeks like joy are for the rich. Historians still argue whether medieval diets provided enough nutrients to sustain a hard laborer's life. One thing's clear, variety was not on the menu. Your meals revolve around 3 categories: grain root and regret. Occasionally meat appears, but usually only if something dies unexpectedly, like a pig or a neighbor. You pass a group of children playing a game with sticks and a rock. One of them is definitely bleeding, but again, if they're upright, they're doing great. A dog limps by with a chicken foot in its mouth. No one chases it. You pause by a public well to take a sip from the bucket someone's drawn up. The water smells like moss and tastes like a dare. You drink anyway. What choice do you have? Someone nearby spits into the mud. You nod at him. He nods back. That's how friendships are formed here, over shared suffering and communal saliva. By the time the sun peeks fully over the trees, your belly is sloshing with questionable water. Your boots are soaked, and you're already mentally negotiating with fate if you can just make it to sunset without vomiting, freezing, or getting accused of witchcraft. You'll call it a win. You make your way back toward the hut, where your father is sharpening a hoe and your mother is spinning thread. She looks up sighs and hands you a basket. You know what that means. Chore time. It's not even mid-morning yet, and already you'd kill for toast. You take the basket in silence, already feeling the familiar ache in your arms before the work even begins. It's woven from brittle reeds patched in places with twine and sheer willpower, and its job is to carry things heavier than you'd like. Today, that includes potatoes, or maybe turnips, or if fortune is smiling on you, which it never is, maybe even something with flavor. Your feet crunch over frost-laced grass as you head toward the communal plot, one of the few shared spaces in the village not currently being trampled by goats. The sun finally breaks free from the clouds, but it doesn't warm you. It only reveals how truly filthy your cloak is. You make a mental note to scrub it later, knowing full well you won't. As you walk, you scratch your side through your tunic. The itch is maddening, and it spreads. You stop and lift the hem to check, finding what you feared red welts, flea bites in formation, a reminder that your mattress isn't just uncomfortable, it's a tiny battlefield. Your skin's losing the war. By the time you reach the edge of the field, your fingers are stinging from the cold. You look down at your hands, cracked knuckles, dirt crusted beneath your nails, and a scar on your index finger from last year's sickle mishap. You were lucky. The village healer thought it might need to come off, but instead she just screamed into a pouch of herbs and wrapped it in moss. It mostly worked. You start pulling at the tough roots in the ground, hands moving automatically. Your back bends. Your knees pop. You try not to think. This is what daily labor means here. Movement without pause, repetition without end. You don't question it. You don't have time to. Nearby, an older man coughs, deep rattling. People glance up. That kind of cough is dangerous. It sticks around. It spreads. You look away as if that'll keep you safe. It won't. A girl a few rows over catches your eye and offers a tired smile. You nod back. She's about your age, wearing a dress patched so many times it resembles a quilt. She tugs at weeds with one hand and balances a toddler on her hip with the other. She's been married for a year. The toddler is her second. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly as joyless as they seem, or if we're just seeing the darkest bits. But here, under a pale sun with frost biting your fingertips and your stomach still muttering threats, joy feels like a myth, like dragons, or clean socks. You pause to stretch your back, arching and groaning, and that's when your tunic lifts just enough to let the cold in. You yelp and straighten, glaring at the sky like it's personally mocking you. Maybe it is. It's not just the cold, it's the clothes themselves. You're wearing a linen undertunic, at least what used to be linen before the sweat and time gave it the texture of sandpaper. Over it, a woolen overgarment, heavy and damp stiff at the elbows from yesterday's labor. Your cloak is wool too fraying at the edges, and everything you own smells like smoke mildew and a hint of goat. There's no soap, not real soap, just lye and ashes mixed into something that burns your skin and makes you question your life choices. Washing clothes is a full-body exercise involving a stream, a rock, and an hour of arguing with fabric that actively resists cleanliness. And yet, If you don't wash, Agnes will talk. You keep working. The basket grows heavier with gnarled tubers and your arms begin to throb. You hear the bell in the distance again, signaling midday. Lunch is theoretically coming, but don't get excited. It's more pottage, maybe with a different root this time. The surprise is half the fun. The other half is pretending it's edible. A boy runs past barefoot despite the chill. His tunic is too short and his nose is bleeding, but he's laughing, chasing a dog with a stick. You smile despite yourself. Children are indestructible, or they die young. There's rarely an in-between. Your friend from earlier, the patchwork girl, calls out something to you, something about a wandering merchant rumored to be in the next village over. You both know what that means. Stories, spices, and if you're extremely lucky, gossip. Maybe he brought almonds. Maybe he brought disease. Either way, it's something new. You lift the now heavy basket and start trudging back. Every step is deliberate. The mud grips your boots like it wants to keep you. Your legs argue with you. You keep walking. Back at the hut, your mother accepts the basket with a nod, already beginning to sort through its contents. She murmurs something about boiling the greens and drying the rest. Your little sister peers into it, hopefully. Her nose wrinkles. You slump by the hearth, your hands resting in your lap, tingling from cold and effort. The fire crackles faintly. You can feel a nap threatening to sneak up on you, but you can't sleep. Not yet. It's only midday, and there are still a dozen small labors ahead. You sigh and look out the door again. The goose is back, and it's watching you. You try to ignore the goose, but let's be honest, it's personal now. Its beady eyes follow your every move, neck twitching like it's plotting something elaborate and possibly legal in this century. You close the hut door slowly, not out of fear, but because you value your remaining toes. Back inside, you warm your hands near the hearth, now coaxed back to life by a bit of kindling, a breath of determination, and probably a prayer. Your fingers flex slowly, skin pink and angry. The warmth stings at first, but you welcome it. Then comes your least favorite part of the midday lull, sitting still. Because when you sit still, your teeth start to throb. It begins as a dull ache near your molars, a low, persistent reminder that medieval dentistry is just not a thing. Toothaches here are as common as lice and almost as beloved. You wiggle your tongue against one sore tooth and wince. It's loose again. You remember once when old Wilfred the tanner had a similar problem and the local healer offered him a solution, red-hot pliers and a half-pint of mead. Wilfred screamed so loudly that 3 dogs fled the village and never returned. The healer still claims it was a success, though Wilfred now whistles when he speaks. Historians still argue whether medieval folks really had terrible teeth, or if we're exaggerating based on the decayed remains of a few unlucky peasants. But here's the truth. Sugar, when it shows up, is rare and expensive, but grit is everywhere. Your bread has grit. Your soup has grit. The air probably has grit. And every bite wears you down one tooth at a time. You glance over at your mother who's gnawing through a dry crust of rye like it owes her money. She's missing 3 teeth and proudly tells the story of how one fell out during childbirth. No one questioned it. You stand to help her stir the pot, and every movement jars your jaw. That one tooth is plotting its escape. You can feel it. You ladle more pottage. Today's variant includes a few suspicious greens, possibly from yesterday's washing water. You hand a bowl to your little brother, who drinks it like it's fine wine. Kids are so adaptable, or they've just given up sooner than you have. You try to chew a soft chunk of carrot. Mistake. Immediate regret. You wince, hold your cheek, and think of that time last winter when someone claimed clove oil helped. You tried it. It didn't. You suspect the clove oil may have been squirrel pee. And let's talk hygiene. You don't brush your teeth because there's no toothbrush. There's a twig, maybe a rag. Occasionally, you might rub ashes along your gums if you're feeling fancy. But mostly, you just hope your breath doesn't knock out livestock. You try to distract yourself by helping your mother sort dried herbs. Sage thyme may be something pretending to be rosemary. The herbs are used for flavoring food, warding off illness, or hiding the scent of rot. Multitaskers truly. Then she hands you the wool bundle. Ah, yes, spinning time. You sit cross-legged and begin working the spindle. The wool is rough, greasy, and filled with bits of straw. Your fingers are sore already, but there's no alternative. This is how thread happens. This is how clothing exists. Every strand you wear comes from 1,000 twitches of sore fingers and stubborn wool. You hum as you work. The rhythm is slow and repetitive, almost meditative if it weren't so itchy. Your little sister watches and mimics you with a clumsy spindle of her own. She's learning. She's 5. She's late. Children here don't get childhoods. They get chores and a wooden spoon. If they're lucky, that spoon is only used for stirring. More often, it's for discipline. Your father walks in carrying a bucket of water that sloshes ominously. It's slightly yellow, smells like wet bark, and contains floating things. It came from the village barrel, which also collects rain runoff, bird droppings, and the occasional frog. This is your drinking water. He pours some into a jug and passes it around. You sip carefully. It's warm and tastes vaguely like sadness, but at least it's wet. You glance outside. The goose is now pecking at the doorframe. Later you think. Later you'll settle this. The ache in your jaw returns with a vengeance. You chew the inside of your cheek instead, which is somehow the lesser evil. You try to remember the last time anyone around here had a full smile. You can't. There's a local superstition that if your teeth hurt, it means the devil has touched your tongue. Your neighbor once poured ale over his mouth and stood in the moonlight muttering curses to chase it out. His breath improved, but his teeth fell out anyway. You stare into the hearth's tiny flames and let your mind wander anything to ignore the throb in your skull. You imagine what it might feel like to drink something hot, sweet, and soothing. Tea. You've heard of it. Only nobles drink it. You'd give anything for one cup just to swish and soothe and forget. Instead, your mother hands you another wool bundle. You sigh, pick up the spindle again, and keep twisting. Outside, the goose honks once. Just one sharp note. You can feel it, judging your dental hygiene from the yard. The sun has shifted now, casting long, pale beams across the village paths. It's afternoon, though. No one owns a clock. You just know by the shadows and by the hollow pang in your stomach that tells you pottage round two is still several hours away. You're outside again this time, with a sack of scraps slung over your shoulder. Not food scraps, fabric scraps. Your job, mending, not inside by the fire, no. You're perched on a wobbly stool just outside the hut's door, where the light's better and the breeze can carry away the smell of boiled cabbage. The breeze also carries something else, the delicate scent of manure wafting from the neighboring yard where old Bart is cleaning out his pigsty. You nod in greeting. He grunts in response. That's as warm as a conversation gets on a Wednesday. You begin patching your father's tunic, which has a tear in the armpit the size of a small rat. The fabric is rough, uneven, and smells faintly of moss. You thread the bone needle slowly, careful not to prick yourself. Infections happen fast around here. One nick, one splinter, one unwashed cut, and suddenly the local priest is reciting your name in Latin while someone digs a shallow grave. You sew in silence, but your ears stay busy. A baby wails somewhere to the east. A woman yells about someone stealing her wash water. A rooster crows again for no reason, because roosters are medieval chaos agents. And beneath it all, the village hums along in its usual way, slowly, stubbornly, slightly damp. You glance up to find your neighbor's teenage son walking past. He's wearing boots too big for his feet, a hat shaped like disappointment, and a tunic that once belonged to his grandfather. It still smells like him. Probably. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers felt shame in how they dressed. Some say no clothes were utility. Others believe even back then people quietly judged each other's patchwork and stains. You're sure Agnes does. She once stared the hole in your sleeve for a full minute, crossed herself, and walked away. You finish the mending and hang the tunic on a peg beside the door. A small victory. Your mother hands you another, of course. You sigh, and that's when the air changes. There's shouting down the lane near the village center. You hear boots scuffing a donkey braying, and the unmistakable voice of a man trying to sell something he probably didn't grow himself. You perk up. Could it be you abandon your pile of clothes and hurry down the muddy path dodging geese, plural? Now reinforcements have arrived, skipping over puddles and nearly tripping on a loose cobblestone that might have once been part of the Roman Empire. Who knows? There he is, the merchant, perched on a wearied donkey with faded satchels, a wiry beard, and an air of unearned confidence. He greets the gathering crowd with a grin that could sell sand in a desert. He reaches into a cloth bundle and pulls out almonds. Actual almonds. You haven't seen an almond since your cousin's wedding, and even then it was just one slice thin and passed around like a relic. You don't have anything to trade, but you stand and watch anyway, breathing in the faint aroma of spice and sweat and crushed nuts. It smells like a world bigger than your village, a world with ports and maps and allegedly soap. He continues his pitch, offering ribbons from France, a comb from the east, and something he claims is a fig, though it looks like it lost the will to live mid-voyage. A boy offers 2 eggs and a carved whistle. The merchant accepts. It's a fair trade if you squint. The excitement is brief, like most good things. Soon he's moving on the crowd dispersing, and you return to your stool with an empty stomach and full imagination. A fig. Just once you'd like to bite into something that didn't crunch because of sand. As you sit again to resume sewing, the clouds begin to gather. A chill sneaks in behind them, curling around your ankles. You glance at the sky. Rain is coming. You can smell it, that sharp scent of damp earth and inevitability. You grab the mended clothes and bring them inside, hanging them by the fire. The hut smells like wet wool and wood smoke, but at least it's warmer than outside. You settle back by the hearth, and your mother hands you a warm stone, not as a gift, as a makeshift heater. You clutch it like a sacred object and try to ignore the fact that your left boot is leaking again. The baby in the corner hiccups. Your father snores in his seat. The goat is chewing on your spindle. You rest your head against the wall and close your eyes for just a second. The goose honks. You flinch. Some things never sleep. You must have dozed off because when your eyes open again, the room is darker and your neck feels like it's been used to hold up the entire roof. The fire has dimmed to a moody flicker, casting shadows on the walls that make the hut look haunted. If by spirits they are very poor ones, maybe just ghosts of lost onions or a dream you once had about comfort. You sit up slowly brushing straw from your tunic. Your jaw still aches, your arms are sore, and your stomach is once again staging a quiet protest. You know what that means. It's almost supper, or in local terms, reheated misery. Outside, the rain has arrived. It taps at the thatch roof gently now. But you know it's only getting started. Rain in this village doesn't fall so much as it soaks. It finds its way in through the gaps in the roof, the cracks in the door, and occasionally your boots, especially your boots. You peer outside. The path is already a muddy river. Your brother is trying to build a dam out of sticks and what looks like an unfortunate turnip. The goose is nowhere in sight. That somehow worries you more. Back at the hearth, your mother stirs the pot. The pottage has thickened into something less stew, more paste. It glops into bowls with a sound that suggests resistance. You take yours and sit cross-legged, watching steam rise in sad little curls. This version of the stew includes barley, some boiled weeds, and possibly a chunk of meat, though it might just be a rock. You bite down, carefully testing your remaining teeth like a gambler placing bets. The fire pops, sending a tiny ember your way. You flinch instinctively, not because it's dangerous, but because sparks here mean holes in tunics. And you just patched this one. Your father joins you slurping loudly. He smacks his lips and grunts something that could be approval or indigestion. Your mother nods proud. It's a good batch, apparently. You chew slowly, gaze drifting to the dripping door frame. Somewhere a baby cries, a pot clatters, and someone yells from a distant hut about a missing chicken. probably the goose's fault. You wonder again what nobles eat. Real bread, maybe. Meat more than twice a season. Wine that isn't sour. They probably even sit on things that don't stab them in the spine. Your stew, for the record, is stabbing you. Emotionally. Historians still argue whether peasants were truly malnourished or if modern assumptions are exaggerated. But when your dinner makes your gums bleed and your main dessert is not dying before bedtime, you feel pretty confident in your conclusion. You finish the meal, which is to say, you scrape the bottom of the bowl and question your choices. Then, with a practiced sigh, you rise and begin clearing dishes. There's no sink, of course, just a basin, a rag, and some ash water that smells worse the more you stir it. You clean each bowl, rubbing out the residue with your fingers. The water is cold. Your fingers are colder. There's no soap, only prayer and friction. You're rinsing the final spoon when someone knocks on the door. A rare event. Knocking means urgency or gossip. You look at your mother. She looks at you. You both look at the door like it owes you money. You open it slowly. It's Agnes. Of course it is. She's holding a bundle of herbs and a scowl. Fever's spreading again, she says, not even bothering with a hello. Old Merrick's boy has boils. She spits into the mud. Probably the black again. You freeze. That word. The black. It's always spoken quietly, like saying it louder might summon it. It's not just a plague. It's the plague. The one that came through 3 winters ago and turned half the village into burial mounds and smoke. Your mother thanks her, takes the herbs and closes the door. The air in the room feels heavier now. Even the fire seems to dim like it's listening. You sit again suddenly, aware of how warm your face is. Is it just the fire or something else? Your father grunts again, probably just a rash. He mutters, "Kids get rashes." He doesn't sound convinced. Your mother adds more wood to the fire. You wrap your arms around your knees and stare into the flames. Suddenly, every cough, every itch, every ache feels suspicious. You think of that last outbreak, the wheezing, the swellings, the way the bell never stopped ringing. You were lucky then, or maybe just missed. This time, the rain grows louder, drumming a steady rhythm against the thatch. You lie back, head resting against the wall, and close your eyes. Just for a second. You tell yourself you're not sick. Not yet. The rain doesn't stop. It becomes a presence, a mood, a second skin over the village that clings to everything, clothes, thoughts, and bones. You wake before dawn to the same wet rhythm on the roof and a feeling like the damp has soaked into your soul. Your head feels fuzzy, not aching exactly, just heavy like it's been stuffed with wool. And your throat raw, scratchy. The kind of scratch that makes you wonder whether it's the start of something or just the usual punishment for existing. You sit up slowly and catch your reflection in a small dented metal plate. Pale, slick with sweat. Your hair, if we can call it that, is a tangled mess of straw grease and pessimism. You splash your face with water from a bucket near the door. It's ice cold and you gasp, but at least it makes you feel human again. Kind of. You shuffle outside wrapped in your damp cloak, and the mud greets you like an old friend, clingy cold and completely uninterested in personal space. You make your way to the barrel near the hut, hoping to collect fresher water. The surface ripples gently disturbed by both falling rain and the occasional insect doing laps. You scoop some into a jug and take a sip. It tastes like moss and roof soot. Still better than the stew. Inside, your mother's up already grinding something with a mortar and pestle, an old root dried and stringy. She mutters under her breath. Not a spell, technically, just a mother's exhausted mantra for keeping sickness out of the house. You recognize the ingredients: garlic vinegar, dried mint, and something that looks suspiciously like toenail. You don't ask. Breakfast is quiet. The air in the hut is dense, like it knows something you don't. You chew slowly, forcing down spoonfuls of warm, gelatinous pottage that stick to your teeth and every regret you've ever had. You try not to cough. That's the rule now, no coughing, unless you want the whole hut to look at you like you just announced you were dating Satan. You finish eating and step outside. The rain's lightened into a fine mist, the kind that soaks you without bothering to announce itself. You tug your hood over your head and head toward the healer's hut, not for yourself, of course. You're fine. You're just accompanying your sister. She has a scratch on her arm, that's all. The path is quiet. Fewer people out, fewer voices. You pass a hut with a cloth draped over the door, black, damp, unmoving. That usually means someone inside has died or is trying not to. You don't stop walking. The healer's hut is crooked and smells like wet bark and panic. You knock once and duck inside. It's warmer here, smoky. Herbs hang from the beams in little bundles, sage, lavender, feverfew. The healer Mira doesn't look up at first. She's too busy grinding something into a paste. You wait. She finally glances up, her eyes tired. "Sit," she says simply. "You do?" Your sister shows her the scratch. Mira cleans it with something that smells like sour wine, and Death wraps it in linen and presses a sprig of dried rosemary to her forehead. Ritual or real doesn't matter. You both nod and thank her. Then she turns to you. "You're pale." "I'm always pale," you say with a weak smile. She frowns. "You're sweating." "It's humid." "You're shivering." You shrug. "It's the breeze." She steps closer and puts the back of her hand against your neck. Her eyes narrow. "I'm fine," you say. She doesn't answer, just reaches for a jar and smears something across your chest. It smells like mint and ash. You don't fight it. She hands you a packet of herbs wrapped in cloth and says, "Steep this in hot water. Don't swallow the twigs." You thank her, even though you know the tea will taste like boiled disappointment. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine helped or just passed the time, until you died. There were certainly remedies, some botanical, some spiritual, some just wildly imaginative, like wearing a pigeon carcass around your neck to draw out disease. That was a real thing. Probably didn't work. You leave the hut quietly, herbs in hand, the rain pattering against your hood. The village is hushed, like everyone's holding their breath or avoiding shared air. Back home, your mother boils water over the fire and drops in the herbs. The steam rises in plumes that sting your eyes. You sip. It tastes like hot mulch. You drink anyway. You spend the rest of the day by the fire, wrapped in every cloak and blanket available. Your father nods once, then steps outside to tend the animals. Your siblings whisper and squabble, keeping their distance. Even the goat gives you space. The fire crackles, the wind moans, the rain picks up again. You pull your cloak tighter and try to sleep. Not because you're tired, but because if you're sleeping, you can't feel the fever crawling up your spine. You wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat heart, pounding like a drum under siege. The fire has burned down to faint embers, casting a dull orange glow on the hut walls. The shadows sway gently, dancing in silence, but something in the air has changed. Your blanket is damp, clinging to you like a wet rag. Your tunic sticks to your skin, and your mouth is as dry as if you'd swallowed a sack of flour. You sit up slowly, every joint resisting like rusted hinges. Your breath rasps in your throat. It's not just a fever now, it's a presence. You glance around. Your mother is asleep by the hearth, a spindle still clutched in her hand. Your father snores long and low from his pile of straw. Even the goat sleeps unusually still. Only you are awake, wrapped in sweat and questions. You reach for the herb packet Mira gave you. Most of the tea remains untouched. You sip it, grimacing. Cold now. Worse than mulch. Like sucking moss through a boot. Outside, the rain has slowed to a drizzle. You can hear the distant croak of frogs in the puddles and the occasional shuffle of something, an animal, probably, or maybe just the wind. You lie back, eyes wide, staring at the rafters. Your head throbs in a steady rhythm. You press your hand to your forehead. Hot. Burning. Your thoughts begin to drift. Your brain fills with strange images, faces that aren't yours, songs you've never heard, and a wheel made of fire rolling across the sky. You try to focus. Think of something normal. Think of pottage. Nope, that made it worse. You close your eyes and let yourself slip sideways into half sleep, where dreams blur into memories and the line between alive and not feels like a suggestion. Time passes, and then light leaks in again through the wall cracks. Another day. You sit up slowly, half expecting to feel worse. You do, but you're still breathing. And that in this century is a victory. You shuffle outside into the gray morning light. The air is heavy with fog, and everything glistens like the world's been crying. A few villagers move about in silence, cloaks pulled tight, heads low. You head toward the central well, if only to move, to feel something other than sweat and shivers. The stones are slick, the rope damp, but you draw up a bucket of water anyway. It smells like pond. You drink. You're past caring. On your way back, you pass by old Marta's hut. The cloth over her door is gone. In its place, silence. Someone's swept the path. Someone's lit a candle. You keep walking. Back at home, your mother hands you a damp cloth and instructs you to rub your chest. The cloth smells like rosemary and vinegar. You do it. It helps. A little. Then she gives you the good blanket, the one with fewer holes and only 2 burn marks. You lie down beside the hearth, and she tucks it around your feet. Her hand lingers on your forehead. She doesn't say anything, but you can feel the worry in her fingers. Your sister sits nearby plucking at a strand of wool, watching you quietly. She's 5, but in this world, that's already half a lifetime. She knows more about illness than most adults today ever will. Later that morning, the village bell rings once, just once. You freeze. That's the signal. A death. No name is called out. Not yet. But everyone knows a boy will be sent around with the name after Mass. The priest will recite a prayer. The body will be washed with wine wrapped in linen and buried by sundown, if it can be. You hear footsteps outside, a creak of a cartwheel. Someone whispers your name. You don't respond. You just lie still. The fire crackles beside you, and you focus on that, just the sound, the rhythm, the warmth. You pull the blanket higher and shut your eyes again. Maybe the fever will break, maybe it won't. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasant truly lived in constant fear of death, or whether it was simply the way of things accepted, unspoken, inevitable. You don't fear death right now. You're too tired. You just hope the blanket stays warm a little longer. The fever, by some miracle, starts to recede by nightfall. You wake in a puddle of your own sweat, disgusting, yes, but also strangely triumphant. Your limbs ache, your mouth tastes like boiled hay, and your skull still hums with pressure, but you feel clearer, enough to notice that the goat is staring at you again, possibly with judgment. The fire has been rebuilt, and its heat wraps around your chest like a slow exhale. Your mother ladles out a new batch of stew, bless her, and you actually smell something familiar in it. Onion, maybe even garlic, could just be wishful thinking. But either way, it's warm and edible, which is really all you can ask for. You sit upright to eat, and your sister cheers softly. Your father grunts from the corner without looking up, and the goat sneezes violently. Everyone is showing their love in their own way. After the meal, your mother hands you a cloth and a brush. It's time to clean. Not for aesthetics. There is no beauty in a one-room hut shared with 5 people, 2 rodents, and a freeloading chicken, but for survival. Dirt attracts vermin. Vermin bring disease. Disease brings the bell. You get to work. You scrub the corner where the baby sometimes pees in her sleep. You sweep out clumps of old rushes and toss them into the fire where they sizzle and pop like regret. You open the shutter for a breath of fresh air and receive instead the familiar scent of wet soil, old manure, and despair. You close the shutter. The room looks marginally better, not clean, just less tragic. After cleaning, your mother unwraps a bundle from the shelf. Inside, herbs, dried, crumbled, and smelling of forest and bitterness. She tells you you'll help with the salve. She's making it for Marta's daughter, who now has the cough. You grind the leaves slowly with a rounded stone, adding drops of oil water and a bit of ash. The result looks like mud and smells like burnt celery. You scrape it into a cracked pot and tie it with twine. Later, someone will deliver it. You pray it helps. Then, as night falls again, you slip outside. The village is still. Smoke curls up from chimneys into a sky peppered with stars. Despite the dampness, the evening is almost peaceful. You walk a few paces down the path, enjoying the quiet when you notice a figure near the chapel, small, cloaked, hunched. You freeze. It turns slowly. A girl, maybe 13, maybe younger. She's holding a bundle of baby. You've seen her before, but not often. She's from the far edge of the village near the woods. She sees you watching and gives a quick nod, then disappears behind the stone wall. You're reminded once again that everyone is holding something heavy here. A burden, a memory, a mouth to feed. Usually more than one. Historians still argue whether medieval communities were close-knit out of affection or necessity. But in the hush of evening with death, only a day's journey from any door, you realize it doesn't matter. Neighbors are lifelines. Enemies become alliances. And gossip is both entertainment and insurance. You return to the hut, your feet squishing in your damp boots. Inside, the fire glows gently. Your mother has finally sat down. Your father snores in the corner. Your siblings are curled together under a blanket that smells like goat and smoke and security. You lie down beside them, pulling your cloak over your shoulders. Your skin still feels hot, but not boiling. Your mind still feels clouded, but not storming. Just as your eyes begin to close, there's a scratching sound outside the door. You freeze. Another scratch. Then a honk. The goose. It's back. You breathe a long, wheezy sigh, equal parts relief and disbelief. Not the plague, not a demon, just that feathery menace again demanding tribute or revenge, or both. You roll over and bury your face in the blanket, chuckling softly. You survived the fever. The goose is another matter. Morning comes not with sunlight, but with the gentle slap of wet straw against your cheek. Your youngest sibling has rolled over in her sleep and is now drooling on your arm. You peel yourself out from under the communal blanket, every limb protesting as though you've just risen from a battlefield, which, in a way, you have. The fire has burned low again. You poke at the embers with a stick and add a handful of dry twigs. They crackle into reluctant flame. Your mother murmurs something in her sleep. You let her rest. She never really gets to. You pull on your boots, still damp. Of course they are. You haven't known dry footwear in weeks, maybe months. You're not sure. The days blur together into one long rotation of mud work and creatively flavored pottage. Your task today, collect firewood. Again. You head toward the edge of the forest with a small cart in tow, really more of a glorified box on wheels that leans to the left and squeaks with every step. It's early fog, still hanging like a veil over the trees. The village behind you murmurs with the sounds of another day beginning, coughs roosters, someone yelling about a missing sheep. The forest isn't far, but it feels like a different world. The trees are damp, and still their bark slick with moss. You scan the ground for dead branches, snapping what you can and piling them into the cart. Each piece of wood you lift feels heavier than the last. You're still weak from the fever, and your back is reminding you of every movement. As you bend to grab a particularly stubborn branch, you hear something behind you. Footsteps? No, just a deer slipping silently through the trees. You lock eyes for a moment. It stares at you, then bounds away. You're not sure who looks more startled. You gather what you can enough to make a decent fire, but not enough to impress anyone and start back. The cart complains the whole way. One wheel jams on a root and nearly tips the whole thing over. You swear under your breath, then remember that Agnes lives just across the path. You mouth a silent apology to the heavens. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers had swear words. Of course they did. You do. They're just in Old English shouted into the wind when your wheel breaks and your toe finds a rock. Back at the hut, your mother's up again. She's boiling water, stirring the pot with one hand while rocking the baby with the other. She greets you with a nod, sees your flushed cheeks, and thrusts a cup of something green and terrible smelling into your hands. You drink it. You don't ask what it is. Best not to know. You stack the wood beside the hearth and collapse onto a bench made from 2 logs and some planks. Your arms feel like pudding, your legs like porridge, your brain somewhere between cabbage and fog. Then you hear it, the bell, 2 rings. That means another death. Not the same family as yesterday. You stare at the floor. No one speaks. It's like the bell carries the silence with it, a kind of authority that stills everyone like the village itself is holding its breath. Later, you learn it was Ewan, the weaver's son. He was 10, laughed like a kettle on the boil, played with a wooden sword, and used to chase the goose when no one else dared. The goose will be pleased. No one knows what got him. Could be the fever, could be a twisted ankle that festered, could be the water. It's always the water. You look down at your cup. There's still some left. You pour it into the fire, and it hisses like a warning. The rest of the day is slow heavy. You help your mother grind dried roots into powder-packed bundles of herbs for the healer and patch a tear in your sister's only dress. No one laughs. Even the goat is quiet. That night, your father returns from the fields early. His face is grim. He doesn't speak much, but you see it in his eyes. More crops have failed. The rain has rotted the roots again. Supper is even thinner than usual. A broth that's more water than substance. You eat it anyway. No one wants to be the one to say it, but the truth hovers in the air like smoke. If the harvest doesn't improve, winter will not be kind. You lie down early, trying not to think about Ewan, trying not to think about the well, or the goat, or the hunger crawling into your belly already. You close your eyes, and in the darkness you hear the faint creak of a cartwheel. Somewhere another bell is waiting. You wake up to the sound of rain again, not the gentle kind, but the sharp, relentless drumming that seeps through thatch and optimism alike. The roof is leaking in 3 places, which honestly is an improvement over last month. You reposition the bucket, then the pot, then a chipped wooden bowl that's only technically a bowl because it holds things. You stretch bones clicking like castanets and peer outside through the slats. The path is more river than road now. You sigh. Today was supposed to be market day. Market day is the closest thing to excitement around here. It's not just trading, it's news noise. The rare possibility of seeing someone from another village who isn't sick suspicious or trying to sell you a miracle tonic made from mushrooms and regret. But with this rain, fewer traders will show, and those who do will be grumpy damp and charging double. Still, it's better than staying inside with the goat who has been eyeing your patched boots like they're part of the menu. You pull on your cloak still wet from yesterday and make your way toward the square, clutching a few bartered goods to trade a bundle of dried herbs, a cracked wooden comb, and a small skein of wool. Not valuable, but enough for maybe a candle stub or half a loaf of bread that hasn't yet turned green. The village square is already humming despite the rain. A few carts have arrived, their canopies sagging with water. People mill about in layers of damp fabric mud up to their ankles, bartering with expressions that say, please, and don't ask questions all at once. One stall has root vegetables, all knobby and grim-looking. Another has a stack of clay pots, most chipped. A woman with arms like tree trunks is selling pickled eggs and possibly, from the smell, vengeance. You hover near the bread vendor. He eyes your goods, sniffs your wool like a cat, suspicious of a gift, and finally shrugs. You get half a loaf in exchange. It's hard enough to qualify as a weapon, but it's bread. You tuck it into your sack like treasure. Next stall candles. You need one. Nights are dark, and your hearth doesn't always cooperate. You offer herbs. The vendor, a man with more beard than face, examines them with exaggerated suspicion before nodding. He hands you a stub of tallow candle already half used and smelling faintly of sheep and hope. You turn to leave when someone calls out behind you, leeches for all ailments, fevers, foul, humors, heartbreak. You turn. The leech seller is here again. He's set up under a torn cloth tarp surrounded by jars of writhing little creatures. One escapes, and he grabs it casually with 2 fingers, plopping it back into its jar like it's just being moody. You step closer because curiosity is stronger than sense. He grins. One on the temple clears the mind. One on the stomach eases digestion. 2 on the back, and you'll feel lighter by a pint. You smile politely and take 3 steps back. Historians still argue whether medieval leeching had any measurable benefits, or if it was mostly a professional excuse to carry jars of bloodthirsty slugs around town. Either way, people used them. A lot. Even royalty. Your friend Greta once had 6 leeches applied to her feet for a headache. She said it worked. Of course, she also fell asleep in the pig trough that night and claimed she spoke to St. Cuthbert. Interpret as you will. The rain intensifies. People start packing up. The bread man is already gone. You pull your hood tighter and start walking home, sack heavier, stomach growling. Halfway there, your foot sinks ankle deep into mud. You curse under your breath quietly again because Agnes. Back home, your mother's setting out bowls. More stew. Always stew. This one is thinner than yesterday's. There's a single piece of carrot floating near the top like a life raft. You eat quickly, tearing off bits of the market bread to soak up what you can. It's chewy and a bit sour, but you don't care. Your body is just glad it isn't fever tea. After the meal, your father calls you over. He wants help with the thatch. Because, of course, you climb up onto the roof with him, wet straw under your knees, hands numb from cold. You weave new bundles in as he passes them up the two of you working in quiet rhythm. Rain drips down the back of your neck and your arms start to shake from effort. But you keep going because roofs, like families, only hold together if someone does the hard parts without complaining. By the time you climb down, you're soaked through. Your mother wraps you in a dry cloak well drier than the one you were wearing and hands you a warm stone. You sit by the fire again, the candle flickering beside you, casting shadows on the walls that feel less ominous than yesterday. The goat tries to climb into your lap. You push it off. Gently, you made it through market day. You have bread. You have soup. You're not feverish. For now, in Thirtas 2005, that's called thriving. The next morning, the air is thick with fog, the kind that seems to carry whispers clinging to the skin like a wet blanket woven from ghost breath. You step outside, boots squelching, and realize two things instantly. First, it's colder than yesterday. Second, the village is too quiet. There's no clatter of pots, no kids yelling, no distant geese screaming into the void. Even Agnes's constant humming has gone suspiciously silent. Something is off. Then you see it, a procession moving slowly down the main path. 4 villagers carrying a wooden cart, covered in a linen shroud. Another funeral. You freeze where you stand, feeling the chill sink into your bones. That's 3 deaths this week. Your mother steps beside you, silent. She crosses herself, lips moving without sound. Your sister clutches her sleeve. No name is spoken, but everyone knows. Word spreads like smoke, soft, curling into every home. Back inside, the atmosphere tightens. The hearth fire seems smaller. The hut itself feels like it's holding its breath. You go about the morning routine, fetching water, poking the fire, spooning stew into bowls, all without speaking. Even the goat is quiet. You take a sip of water and try not to think about how many mouths have touched that communal bucket this week. After breakfast, your mother asks you to help gather rushes for the floor. In the absence of rugs, medieval folk used bundles of dried rushes to cover dirt floors, absorb moisture, and mask the constant parade of less than charming smells. Yours haven't been replaced in weeks. The last layer now resembles a compost pile more than flooring. You head toward the riverbank where the tall reeds grow. The sun breaks faintly through the fog, lighting your path with a soft golden hue that almost tricks you into feeling hopeful. As you cut rushes with a dull knife, you hear a splash. A boy, maybe 8 or 9, has slipped on the bank and fallen in. He's laughing, thrashing in water up to his knees, completely soaked. His mother yanks him out and swats him lightly on the head. He grins the whole time. You smile despite yourself. Historians still argue whether medieval people experienced joy as we do, whether their laughter was the same. But watching that boy sputter with glee as he's marched back to town, dripping and unbothered, you're convinced joy survived. Even here, you return with your bundle of rushes. Your mother lays them neatly across the floor. The scent of the fresh reeds cuts through the usual miasma of smoke, sweat, and damp wool. Briefly, The hut smells almost green, almost clean. You sit to mend another tunic, fingers sticky from sap and dust. Your sister tries to help, threading a needle with the focus of a saint and the coordination of a startled squirrel. You guide her hand patient. Then a knock. You flinch again, a rarity. You open the door. It's Mira the healer. She looks tired, paler than usual. She holds out a small bundle, more herbs tightly bound. For the cough, she says, you accept it. Your mother nods. Mira lingers a second too long before turning and walking away. She looks thinner, frailer. You wonder who heals the healer. The rest of the day passes slowly. You help your brother clean soot from the hearth using a rag soaked in vinegar. He complains the whole time. You threaten to stick him in the stew. He laughs just once. Later, you help prepare for Mass. It's not optional. Religion in your world is not a private affair. It is the law, the calendar, the spine of the village. The church dictates everything: births, marriages, markets, punishments, seasons, the passing of time itself. You pull on your best tunic, which is only your least patched one, and head toward the chapel. The building is small, wooden, and slightly tilted, like it's always halfway through a shrug. Inside, the walls are damp, the benches hard, the air thick with incense that's working very hard to cover the scent of 40 unwashed villagers in close quarters. The priest begins. Latin rolls over the congregation like a fog, mostly unintelligible, but everyone mumbles along, lips moving out of habit rather than understanding. The homily is about suffering. Again, you glance at Agnes, who catches your eye and frowns like she knows you were internally mocking the sermon. You look away and try to pretend you're thinking holy thoughts. The service ends. You file out. No one lingers. Outside, you catch sight of the graveyard. New mound. No marker yet. Just another patch of earth freshly turned. You swallow hard. You head home silent. Your family walks beside you, cloaks pulled close, faces blank. At the hut, you resume your chores like the day hasn't shifted something inside you, because here it always does. You wake the next morning to the low rumble of raised voices outside. At first it sounds like just another village squabble, someone's sheep in someone else's garden, someone's child knocking over someone's barrels. But this is different, sharper, tense. You roll off the straw mat and peek through the slats. There's a crowd gathering near the chapel. People stand close, shoulders hunched, voices hushed now. You spot the priest, Mira the healer, and oh, there she is, Agnes, arms crossed, face like a thundercloud that's been saving up lightning for this exact moment. You dress quickly and slip outside, your boots still damp and your cloak barely dry. The air is thick with the threat of rain or something worse. You inch toward the gathering, trying to blend in, though in a village this small blending is more of a courtesy than a real possibility. Then you hear it. Witch. The word drops like a stone into water. Everything around it ripples. Agnes is pointing, finger-shaking eyes ablaze. She's accusing Marta, the widow who lives near the woods. Marta, whose herbs helped your mother during your brother's fever. Marta who talks to birds, Marta who doesn't attend Mass quite as often as she should. The crowd murmurs. The priest tries to calm them. Mira stands rigid, not saying anything. You feel your heart thump, not because you believe it, but because you know what comes next. Historians still argue whether witch hunts were rare in early medieval Europe or just poorly recorded. But in moments like this, records don't matter. Only fear does. Someone shouts that their cow stopped giving milk. Another claims they saw Marta gathering herbs under the moon. Someone else insists their daughter's rash didn't heal fast enough. It's absurd, but it's happening. The priest raises his hand, calling for quiet. We will investigate, he says solemnly, which is church code for prepare the stocks and warm up the pyre just in case. You glance at Marta. Her face is blank, resigned. She's seen this coming. You slip away before the crowd disperses, your thoughts buzzing like flies. The village has rules, unspoken, illogical, but deadly. Be too quiet, too old, too unmarried, too helpful, too different, and you become a problem, a threat, a scapegoat. Back at the hut, your mother is wringing out cloths by the fire. You tell her what happened. She sighs, doesn't look up. She should have kept to herself. You want to ask, what does that even mean? But you don't, because you know. You help hang the linens. The room smells like damp wool, boiled roots, and something faintly metallic blood, maybe from yesterday's butchering. The baby is fussing. Your sister is chasing the chicken with a stick. The goat has chewed through the corner of the broom again. It's all normal, terribly, horribly normal, until someone knocks. Again, you flinch. It's not Mira this time. It's a boy with a note, sealed with wax. You open it. It's from the priest. You've been summoned to testify about what you don't know, probably to confirm whether or not you've seen Marta with unnatural birds or chanting into puddles. You go because you have to. At the chapel, the priest sits stiffly behind the altar table, hands clasped, like he's afraid they'll do something sinful on their own. Mira is there too, arms folded, eyes unreadable. He asks you what you know. You tell the truth. Marta gave your mother herbs, nothing else. She didn't curse your stew. She didn't hex your goat. She didn't sneeze rainstorms into the village. They nod, dismiss you. You walk home in silence. That evening, you can hear hammering in the square. They're repairing the stocks. Your sister asks what the noise is. You lie, just fixing a fence. Historians still argue whether the average medieval person truly believed in witches or simply needed someone to blame when the world stopped making sense. You think it's both. You sit near the hearth, staring into the fire, your stomach turning. Because deep down, you know this. If the crops fail again, if someone's baby gets sick, if the wrong wind blows through the wrong door, it could be your mother. It could be Mira. It could be you. And that's the scariest part of all. The village has entered what your father calls the stretch, those long gray days between harvest and snowfall, where time slows mood sour and the ground begins to forget warmth ever existed. You wake to frost again. not snow, just frost. But it clings to everything like guilt, turning the fields to silver and the outhouse seat into a medieval torture device. You draw your cloak tighter around your shoulders, knowing today will be all about staying warm and staying useful. Those are the only real goals anymore. Breakfast is a thinner broth than usual, more flavored water than food. The bread ran out yesterday. No one mentions it. Your mother scrapes the bottom of the stew pot with a carved wooden spoon, trying to coax out anything left behind. She finds a chunk of something unidentifiable. It's chewy. You decide not to ask. After you eat, your father tells you to help reinforce the hut's walls. The wind has been howling at night, low, mournful, and loud enough to make the baby cry. Cracks have formed between the wooden planks. Your job is to stuff them with moss and mud until you feel like you're building a nest or sealing yourself into a wooden coffin. You kneel outside, hands numb, pressing wet moss into frozen gaps. Your fingers cramp. Your knees ache. You sing softly to yourself a half-forgotten rhyme about cows and stars, not because it helps, but because silence feels heavier lately, like it's waiting. Across the path, Agnes watches you from her window, still alive, still suspicious. You give her a quick nod. She closes the shutters. The witch accusations haven't gone away. Marta's still under suspicion. She hasn't been seen in 2 days. Some say she left. Others say she's being questioned, which could mean anything from a stern sermon to, well, something involving rope and a crowd. You press the last clump of moss into the wall and flex your fingers, trying to will blood back into them. Then it hits you. The air smells wrong. Not smoke, not manure, not rain. Burnt wool! You bolt down the lane, slipping in frost and mud heart, pounding in your chest. It's Marta's hut. What's left of it? The roof is gone, half the walls blackened. No flames, just smoke now. People stand around it in silence. No one's crying. No one's yelling. That's worse. You scan the crowd. Mira isn't here. The priest is. He stands solemn, holding a book that doesn't look like it's ever been opened by someone doing actual reading. His voice is low, quoting scripture about cleansing and light and divine punishment. Agnes stands nearby, face serene. You can't look away. No one says which. No one has to. Historians still argue whether public executions were a form of justice or just grim theater. You've made up your mind. This wasn't a trial. It was a message. Later that afternoon, Mira returns. Her eyes are hollow, her lips drawn tight. She says nothing, just lays a small bundle on your doorstep, more herbs, fever root and angelica. You thank her, unsure what else to do. The sky darkens early, the sun giving up halfway through its shift. You spend the evening inside, patching cloaks, boiling water, and pretending to ignore the way your mother keeps glancing at the door like she expects someone to come knocking again. The wind moans through the cracks you miss. At bedtime, your sister curls up beside you. Is Marta gone? She whispers. You hesitate. Yes, you say. Did she leave? She asks, quieter. You say nothing. She nods, as if that's an answer. The fire burns low. You lie in the dark, your back against the wall, heart heavy, throat dry. You survived the fever. You've survived hunger. You're not sure you'll survive the fear. Winter arrives not with ceremony, but with silence. One morning you wake and the world is white. A thick layer of snow has swallowed the village overnight, muffling every sound, hiding every path, and sealing every door frame. You sit up slowly under your mound of blankets, listening to the peculiar hush that only fresh snow brings, like the world is holding its breath. Your breath fogs in the air as you sit by the hearth, coaxing the fire back to life. The logs crackle weakly. You feed it more wood, the pieces you gathered weeks ago, now dry enough to burn properly. The warmth creeps outward reluctant, but real. You hold your hands over the flame, watching the skin flush with life again. There's no rush today. Snow slows everything. Travel is harder. Work is quieter. Even the goose who survived the frost somehow is nestled in a corner, defeated, and possibly planning something even colder than the weather. Outside, you hear the scrape of a shovel. Your father is clearing the path. You join him, wrapping yourself in layers too. Cloaks, a wool scarf, mittens, fashioned from patched scraps of old tunics. You look like a fabric scarecrow. You don't care. You work in silence beside him, pushing snow into uneven piles, revealing the muddy, frozen path beneath. The sun is bright, but offers no warmth, just glare. Your fingers sting from cold despite the mittens. Your breath comes out in short, smoky bursts. The work is slow, numbing, repetitive, but it keeps your mind busy, keeps you from thinking too hard about Marta or about how quickly the village moved on. By midday, you've earned a bowl of broth and a seat by the fire. It's the thinnest meal yet, water, a bit of onion, and a few shriveled greens from the root cellar. You savor every sip. The goat, now something of a roommate, eyes your bowl. You give him the last spoonful. He snorts in thanks. Probably. Your siblings are building something outside. A snow figure, vaguely human, with a crooked smile and wild arms made of branches. It looks like Agnes, which makes you smile. Inside, your mother hums a song you don't recognize while she sews another patch onto a wool tunic. Her fingers move by habit, her eyes distant. Your sister leans against her, half asleep. There's comfort in this stillness, even if it's brief. Historians still argue whether medieval winters were times of rest or quiet dread. Probably both. Work slowed, yes, but so did food. Illness crept in through the cold cracks. Hope froze in place. But families also huddled close. Stories were shared. Bread was rationed with care. And when one log burned low, someone always added another. That night, the priest comes by. A rare visit. He's wrapped in a heavy cloak, face red from the cold hands, stiff. He asks for your father. They speak in hushed tones by the door. Words like rationing and shortages float through the air. When he leaves, your father is quieter than usual. You go to bed early, pulling the blanket to your chin, listening to the wind howl outside. It whistles through the eaves, rattling loose thatch, sending a chill across the room. In the dark, your brother whispers a story about a wolf in the woods. Not a real one, but a ghost. A cursed hunter, doomed to wander in wolf form, howling for his lost love. You don't believe it, but still, when the wind howls louder, your breath catches. The fire crackles one last time before fading to coals. The cold creeps in. You close your eyes and pray the roof holds. By the time you wake, the inside of your nose is frozen, not metaphorically, literally. It crackles when you breathe too hard. You burrow deeper into the blanket pile and stare at the ceiling, where frost has begun tracing delicate white lines between the beams, like winter's trying its hand at embroidery. The fire is out. You can see your breath hanging above your face like a ghost that hasn't decided whether to haunt you or keep you warm. Everyone's still asleep. Your father's snore has taken on a whistle. The goat curled in a corner exhales a puff of steam with each breath. The only one moving is your sister, who is methodically chewing on the corner of the shared blanket in her sleep. You pull yourself up shivering as the blanket slips away. Your tunic is stiff with cold, your cloak damp at the edges. You jam your feet into boots that feel like frozen loaves of bread and shuffle to the hearth. You prod the ashes, find a tiny ember, and begin rebuilding. It's a ritual now, kindling breath. You coax it back to life the same way your mother coaxed your brother through that fever last spring. Gentle but firm, willing it not to die. When the fire finally flares, the room brightens and your siblings stir. You begin the day like every day by feeding the fire and pretending you're not running out of wood. You eat what passes for breakfast, a bit of barley rehydrated with snowmelt and the final sliver of last week's cheese. It's hard as a brick and smells like shoes, but you gnaw through it. You've eaten worse, like that mystery meat stew in autumn. You still don't know what it was. You suspect a goose. After the meal, your father assigns tasks. Yours, check the food stores. Everyone hates this job. It's the daily reminder that hope comes in handfuls, not sacks. You duck into the storage alcove at the back of the hut where the cold is even sharper. Your breath fogs the air and bursts as you take inventory. 3 shriveled onions, half a sack of oats, a jar of pickled something unlabeled, probably turnips, possibly disaster. 1 wheel of cheese with a bite missing. You glare at the goat. That's it. You stare at the empty corners, hoping they'll magically sprout bread. They don't. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had any concept of nutrition. But here, staring at 2 weeks of food stretched over 10 miles, you realize that hunger has no need for science. It just shows up. Every day, you return to the hearth and report the situation. Your father nods grimly. That evening, he decides to join the other men in a hunt. You offer to go too, but he waves you off. You've got your own war to fight, he says, nodding toward the hearth. Your war-patching cloaks tending fire, keeping spirits high enough to prevent spontaneous family combustion. While the men gather at the edge of the woods, your mother prepares a pot of weak broth and adds a few of the pickled things. The goat watches, suspicious. You mirror his expression. You spend the afternoon weaving a new mat out of straw. Your fingers go numb after an hour, but the movement keeps you from thinking about food, or the priest, or Marta. Your sister sings while she winds yarn. Nonsense words. Made-up melody. It echoes in the hut like a charm. You let her sing, The sun begins to fall behind the trees. You strain your ears for the sound of returning footsteps. Eventually they come, but they're slow, heavy. Only two men return, your father among them. They carry a single hare. It's small, barely enough for a meal, but it's meat. Your mother skins it quickly, expertly, and sets it to boil. That night, the smell fills the hut, rich, savory, intoxicating. You haven't had meat in weeks, maybe longer. Even the goat looks impressed. You get one piece. Small but warm and tender, it dissolves on your tongue like a dream. You chew it slowly, reverently. Your sister closes her eyes while she eats hers like it's a prayer. Afterward, the family gathers near the fire. Your father speaks softly, telling a story about a hunt from his youth, a boar, a storm, a broken bow, and a miracle. Your mother rolls her eyes but lets him tell it. You've heard it before, but tonight it's comforting. The fire burns low. The wind howls. The snow outside deepens. You curl under the blanket full for the first time in days. Not just with food, but with something else. Survival. The snow doesn't stop. By the next morning, it's stacked high against the door, turning your wooden hut into something closer to a snow cave with a thatch wig. It takes both you and your father to push the door open, grunting and shoving, until a wedge of pale morning light slices into the gloom. It's a different kind of cold today, sharp, brittle, and quiet. The kind that bites through wool and into bone, where your breath hangs in the air like misty regret, and your fingers go dumb after 5 minutes outside. Still, life doesn't pause for the weather. The animals need tending. The woodpile needs checking. The latrine needs digging out again. Always glamorous your role in this century, you begin with the animals. The chicken coop door is frozen shut. You kick it once, twice, and it gives way with a cracking noise that sounds like a rib snapping. The hens inside glare at you unimpressed, as if the weather were your fault personally. You gather what few eggs there are, 1 cracked. You cradle them like jewels and bring them inside. Next, the goat, the eternal goat. He survived the night just fine, curled in a corner of the barn, eyes bright and beard frosted. You refill his trough with yesterday's stale water, which now resembles something chipped from the edge of a glacier. He drinks it anyway. You envy him. By mid-morning, the fire is going again, and the eggs are sizzling on a hot stone above the flames. You each get a bite, maybe 2. The yolk is pale, the white rubbery, but it's warm. And right now, that's enough to make your sister dance around the hearth like she's eaten at a noble's feast. You take another inventory of food. Nothing new has grown. Nothing new has arrived. No merchant, no miracles. Your mother shakes her head and mutters about making hard decisions soon. You know what that means, rationing. More than before. Smaller bowls. Less for the older kids. More for the little ones. Even less for the goat. He's not going to like that. In the afternoon, your father and a few other men from the village dig out the path to the chapel. It's not for prayer. It's for warmth. The chapel has a larger hearth, and the priest has invited a few families to come and spend the worst days there. It's part kindness, part strategic. Religion needs witnesses after all. That evening, You gather what you can blankets the better cooking pot your sister's carved wooden toy and make the slow walk to the chapel. The snow is thigh deep. Your legs burn with effort. The goat follows, uninvited but determined. Inside the chapel, it's warmer than you expected. Smoky, crowded. Dozens of families huddled in corners around the main hearth beneath makeshift shelters of cloth and straw. You find a space along the far wall and settle in. The priest welcomes you with a nod. No sermon, no scripture, just a quiet nod. It's a strange moment. All the judgments, the gossip, the sideways glances melted away by snow and hunger and the fact that none of it matters when the wind outside could kill you in a single night. You sit on the floor legs, stretched out the warmth of other bodies nearby, helping to thaw your feet. Someone passes around a bowl of stew thinner than yours at home, but shared. You eat, then pass it on. Later, people begin telling stories. Not prayers, just stories. One woman talks about her grandfather surviving a wolf attack using only a walking stick and a pot lid. A boy claims he saw a falling star land in the woods and turn into a silver fox. Your father tells his boar tale again. You let him. The new kids haven't heard it yet. Historians still argue whether storytelling in the medieval era was for entertainment or education. Here, in the flicker of shared firelight, it's something else entirely, defiance. You curl up against your sister, who's already snoring softly. Your mother leans her head on your father's shoulder. Even the goat has found a corner curled beside someone's grandmother, like he's part of the family. The wind howls outside louder now, but inside there's laughter. Not much, just a little, but enough to matter. You close your eyes and listen. To fire, to breath, to survival made communal. The next morning, the chapel smells like smoked wool and too many people breathing in too small a space. You wake, curled against your sister, your back aching from the stone floor, and your mouth dry from the air so thick with shared stories and snoring that it might count as soup if left too long. You stretch carefully, trying not to wake anyone, then tiptoe to the hearth where a few embers still glow. Someone, probably Mira, who seems to have taken up a semi-official role as chapel mother, is already stirring the fire back to life. She doesn't speak, just nods at you and gestures toward a bucket of snow for melting. You grab the iron pot, fill it with a scoop of packed snow, and set it on the fire. It hisses as it melts, the sound oddly comforting, predictable, honest. You look around at the others. Sleeping bodies line the chapel floor, blankets pulled over noses, children cocooned like tiny lumps under cloaks. Agnes, of all people, snores with a slight whistle from the corner, a surprisingly human sound from someone who once condemned a neighbor for dancing on a Sunday. You wonder if she remembers Marta now. You wonder if she regrets anything. But regret isn't currency here. Only bread is. Speaking of which, you get 2 crusts today. Not whole slices, just the dry, curled edges of someone's better yesterday. You chew them slowly, letting the crumbs stick to your fingers. Your sister eats hers in 3 bites and then licks her lips like she just feasted on honey cake. You envy her optimism, or maybe her hunger just hasn't learned how to daydream yet. Later, the priest speaks, not a sermon, really more like a long exhale shaped into words. He talks about endurance, about Job, about patience in the face of trials, about how the Lord blesses those who suffer well. You try not to roll your eyes. You succeed, barely, but your mother listens, head bowed, eyes closed, and Mira watches with her usual quiet weight, as though she's weighing every word against a lifetime of watching bodies give up before hearts did. The wind outside rattles the chapel's wooden beams. A few children flinch. The goat bleats softly from under a pew, annoyed that he's not included in whatever meal may or may not be happening soon. Your father speaks with the other men about wood stores, about ice on the well, about the possibility of another hunt when the storm passes. His voice is steady, but you hear the undertones. No one wants to admit it, but you're all on a countdown now. Food, fuel, time, even faith. You spend the afternoon helping patch cracks in the chapel walls with straw and clay. Your fingers are numb, your sleeves stiff with frozen sweat. You press the mixture into the gaps and think about spring, how far away it feels, how green the world used to be before it all turned white and still. Historians still argue whether peasants in the Middle Ages truly experienced seasons as markers of emotional time or simply as changes in labor patterns. But here, shivering in a chapel and counting potatoes like prayers, you know winter isn't just cold, it's personal. As dusk falls, the priest surprises everyone by producing a bottle of mead. Where he got it is unclear. Possibly divine intervention. Possibly Agnes has been brewing under her bed this whole time. He pours it out carefully, just a sip, each barely enough to wet the lips. But it's warm. It's sharp. It tastes like light, like memory, like the smell of autumn before everything rotted. You sip yours and close your eyes. You let it burn down your throat and sit heavy in your chest. Your sister doesn't like hers. She hands you the rest. You drink that too. That night, people tell different stories. Not heroic ones, not legends, just small ones. A girl remembers the time she saw a fish that glowed in the water. A man recalls a neighbor who carved toys out of bone and left them in the doorways. Mira tells a story about a woman who sang to her herbs and claimed the basil grew better that way. You almost expect someone to mention Marta. No one does. But Mira's voice is quiet and everyone listens. The fire glows brighter for a moment. You lie down again, cheek pressed against your cloak goat, nearby snoring like a badger with sinus issues. You close your eyes and think of that glowing fish. Maybe it's still swimming somewhere. Maybe you'll see it when spring finally remembers you exist. The next morning, the snow has stopped. Completely? Outside, the world is a smooth white sea, unbroken, untouched, glittering beneath the pale glow of a reluctant sun. It looks beautiful. In that way, winter sometimes tricks you like a gift you can't afford to open. You rise slowly, your joints creaking like doors in a haunted manor. Everyone else in the chapel is doing the same, stretching, groaning, warming hands by the hearth. A few kids are drawing in the ash with sticks. One has sketched what might be a pig. or possibly a very fat rat. Either way, it's art. Your father is already at the door, shoulder to shoulder, with two others shoveling snow away so the chapel can breathe again. You help, and within an hour, you've carved a narrow path through the white crust, barely wide enough for two boots side by side. The village is still under siege. Roofs sag with the weight of snow. Icicles hang from the eaves like nature's daggers. No carts will move today. No roads will clear. But there is sunlight now. Weak, yes, but visible. You cling to that. After lunch, if you can call one boiled turnip and half a mug of lukewarm broth lunch, you're sent back to your hut with your mother and siblings to collect anything else useful. The chapel was never meant to house a whole village. Blankets, tools, and even laughter must be rotated. Your home feels alien now, empty and damp. The hearth has gone cold. The rushes on the floor are curling and gray with mold. You gather what you can. Your father's better boots the remaining thread and needle a sack of oats that might still be edible and a frozen lump that could be a beet or a rock. You decide not to find out until supper. Your sister finds her wooden doll under the bench, its painted face worn nearly blank. She holds it like it's alive. In this world, maybe it is. You linger a moment at the door, staring into the one-room life you've always known. It feels smaller now, or maybe you've grown. Either way, you don't rush to close it. On the way back to the chapel, you pass Mira's hut. The door is closed, but smoke curls from the chimney. She stayed behind. She always does. Your mother pauses. "Take her these," she says, handing you half the oats. You hesitate. You're hungry. But you go. You knock softly. Mira opens the door slowly. Her eyes are rimmed with exhaustion. Her hands are stained with ash and something darker. But she smiles when she sees you. You pass her the oats. She nods once. No words. Just a long, tired exhale. Inside her hut smells of sage and sorrow. You glimpse someone lying beneath a blanket. A cough. Not hers. You don't ask. You return to the chapel quietly. Historians still argue whether medieval healers were respected or merely tolerated wise women walking a knife's edge between reverence and suspicion. Mira walks that edge daily, and you're old enough now to see how carefully she balances. That evening, you help stoke the chapel fire again. The embers are slow to catch. You blow gently, whispering to the coals like they're stubborn children. Eventually, flames bloom, and the warmth spreads like forgiveness. Your father tells a story tonight, not the bore story, a new one or new to you, about a time long ago when the river froze so thick people danced on it, when the sky cracked with ice storms and wolves howled so close you could smell their breath. He tells it like a warning, like a memory. Your mother adds that in that same winter, no one died, not even the chickens. She says it like a prayer. After supper, you sit by the wall and watch your neighbors drift into sleep. Agnes is knitting, muttering something under her breath that sounds suspiciously like kindness. A boy nearby plays softly with a carved soldier, missing its legs. Your sister is already curled up on your lap. Outside, the cold returns. But it feels different now. Not gone, but shared. You lie back, arms around your sister's eyes on the flickering ceiling shadows. And for the first time in days, you feel something that might be peace. Not safety, not certainty, just a tiny moment where your stomach is full enough, the fire is warm enough, and you are impossibly still here. You wake to sound, actual sound, voices, not whispers, not snoring, but excited, almost frantic murmurs. You sit up slowly, your back stiff from the chapel floor, the blanket tangled around your ankles like an overzealous vine. You blink toward the light pouring in through the high, narrow windows. It's warmer this morning. There's color in the sky again, a pale pink flush, like the world is finally breathing out after holding it in too long. Someone bursts through the chapel doors tracking snow. It's the baker's boy. His cheeks are red, his hair is wild, and he's yelling something between breaths. They're coming. Everyone stares. He tries again. A cart from the abbey with supplies. The air shifts. You don't need anyone to explain what this means. The monastery a few miles away home to quiet men with generous hands and, most importantly, sellers, is sending help. You haven't seen their cart in weeks. Most had assumed the monks had locked the gates and turned inward, as so many do when plague or hunger whispers through the trees. But they're coming. The priest straightens first. Mira smiles the kind of smile that's more relief than joy. People begin moving, stretching, bundling up, preparing to greet the cart like royalty or salvation. You step outside, boots crunching over snow that's finally begun to soften. Down the lane, just barely visible, are two oxen and a cart crawling toward the village like a dream being pulled through slush. It arrives slow, majestic in the least glamorous way possible. Blankets, salted meat, root vegetables, candles, bread, real bread, still warm. One of the monks climbs down, face ruddy robes, soaked at the hem, and opens his arms like he's expecting a choir to sing. No choir, just weeping, quiet weeping, from adults mostly. You take one loaf, small but dense, heavy in your hands like a stone made of hope. Your mother slices it in the chapel with a knife that hasn't seen fresh bread in months. She hands you a piece. It steams in the cold air. You bite. It's soft, chewy. There's salt. You taste salt. Your eyes burn a little. You pretend it's the cold. Your sister dances with hers in hand, turning circles near the fire. You let her. No one scolds her today. The monk speaks gently with the priest, and Mira explaining that the abbey's stores are tight, but they'll do what they can. They've also brought lye soap, a few medicinal tinctures, and miracle of miracles linen bandages. Mira takes them reverently. The monk pauses before leaving. He glances at the chapel, the smoke-stained ceiling, the bundled families, the goats still here, increasingly a fixture, and says, "You've endured well." The priest nods. He doesn't speak. For once even he knows. Silence says more. As the cart leaves, wheels cutting twin lines through snow, people drift back to their corners. But they do so lighter, straighter. Your father jokes with the man beside him. Mira hums while crushing herbs. Agnes offers half her candle to a young mother with twins. The fire burns brighter that night. You sit with your piece of bread tucked into your tunic, saving part for tomorrow. You run your fingers over its crust, real crust, not burned porridge, and marvel at how something so simple can feel like treasure. Historians still argue whether the monastery system was more charity or control. But today, it's bread, and that's enough. As night falls, the village feels different. Not healed, but hopeful. The priest doesn't read scripture. Instead, he tells a story about a monk who once wrestled a demon in a windstorm and won by singing louder than it could scream. No one laughs, but everyone listens. You lie down that night with your sister's hand in yours and your stomach for once not growling but satisfied. Outside, the wind is calm. The stars are back. The goat is sleeping. And you, survivor of frost fever and far too much soup, close your eyes, not to escape, but to rest. The thaw begins slowly. First, it's the drip. You hear it before you see it. Tiny, steady drops from the eaves of the chapel falling in rhythm onto a puddle that wasn't there yesterday. Then it's the air itself, just a few degrees softer, just enough to let the frost loosen its grip on the windows. You step outside that morning and blink in the sunlight. Actual sunlight. Not the pale wintry gloom that has hovered over the village for weeks, but golden warmth that hits your face like a promise. You close your eyes and soak it in until your cheeks prickle. The snow still covers most of the ground, but you can see patches of earth near the chapel walls. Mud, yes, but it's honest. Brown and ugly and beautiful in its own way. It smells like waking up. Others feel it too. The whole village moves differently today. Slower, maybe, but not from dread, more like cautious curiosity. Like stepping back into your own home after someone's changed the furniture. People begin returning to their huts, assessing damage, patching roofs, scrubbing out soot. The snow reveals everything it buried. Cracked beams, dead hens, a sack of onions that didn't make it. Your hut, surprisingly, still stands. The roof leaks in 2 new places, and something seems to have nested in the corner by the door, possibly the goat. But it's home. You sweep out the rushes, fling open the shutters, and let the light flood in. Dust floats like tiny spirits undisturbed since November. Your sister runs her fingers over the wooden bench near the fire pit. It smells the same, she says. You nod. She's right. Smoke ash, cabbage, goat. Home. That afternoon you help your father chop wood, not just gathering twigs like before, but real chopping axe to log, crack, and split. It feels good. Like agency. Like defiance against everything that tried to kill you for the last 3 months. As you carry split logs into the hut, you pause and glance toward the edge of the village. The snow is melting faster out there. You see the dirt path re-emerging. The well, the stump where kids used to play. A few children are out now laughing, chasing each other, tumbling into the slush without fear. You remember what that kind of laughter sounded like before the fever. You hear it again now. Back inside, your mother has reopened the cupboard doors, organizing what's left. Not much. A few jars, a twist of dried herbs, a strip of cured meat that somehow survived a goat assault. She lets you chew the edge. It's tough and peppery. You don't even care that it takes 6 minutes to finish a bite. At dusk, the priest rings the bell. Not for a death, just to gather. The village trickles back toward the chapel. No heavy cloaks, just shawls and layers. The snow crunches underfoot, but it's thinner now. Your boots no longer disappear with every step. Inside the chapel, he speaks briefly. Not scripture this time, just thanks. To the abbey, to Mira, to the villagers, to the fire, to the bread, to the stubborn spirit of those who showed up every morning. Mira is there, arms crossed, tired but upright. She hasn't said much in days, but tonight she speaks. There will be illness again, she says. There always is. But so long as we share what we have, so long as someone stokes the fire and someone holds the line at the edge of the village, we'll last. No one claps. They just nod. Because here that kind of speech isn't for applause. It's a binding spell, a vow. You walk home with your family, the stars blinking awake overhead. Your sister tries to name them. That one looks like a spoon, she says. That's not how constellations work, you tell her. Doesn't matter, she replies. And it doesn't. You lie down in your own bed that night, such as it is, and for the first time in months, you aren't sleeping shoulder to shoulder with half the village. You're warm, fed, alive. Outside, the thaw continues. Icicles drip like slow applause. Earthworms stretch. A bird chirps once like it forgot how and is just remembering. You smile in the dark. It's not spring yet, but it's trying. The next few days pass like a slow exhale, tentative, unsure, but full of motion. The snow recedes inch by inch, revealing a patchwork of squelching mud, crushed straw loss, mittens, and the occasional half-rotten turnip, and everywhere puddles. Big ones, deep ones. You watch your sister nearly disappear into one while chasing the goat. She emerges laughing, soaked, triumphant. The goat looks less amused. You spend most of your time outside now, not because the work's any easier, but because after weeks of being shut inside smoky huts and overcrowded chapels, the air feels different, cleaner, like it's been scrubbed with pine needles and sunlight. Your father's fixing the fence today, and you're helping. Sort of. Mostly handing him nails and pretending not to be distracted by a group of boys further down the lane, daring each other to climb the still icy tree stump. It ends in bruises, a ripped tunic, and heroic bragging rights. The fence creaks as you hammer another nail into place. It's not straight. It never is. Nothing in the village is. The huts lean like tired drunks. The paths snake without logic. Even the church is lopsided, but it holds, like the people. Bent, but here, after the fence, you're sent to check the fields. It's a mess. The furrows have collapsed under snowmelt, and the compost pile has migrated downhill slightly. You sink ankle deep in mud and consider just lying down and letting the earth claim you. But then you spot it, a sprout, tiny, green, unimpressive to most. But to you, it's a victory flag. You crouch, brush away the sludge, and stare at it for a good 30 seconds like it might burst into a full cabbage if you just believe hard enough. Later at supper, you tell your mother. She nods, but doesn't say anything. Just ladles out another bowl of broth. This one has bits of barley in it, leftovers from the Abbey stores. You chew slowly, trying to make it last. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants actually starved or merely suffered chronic undernourishment. Either way, Your body knows how to tell the difference between food and filler. Tonight is food. After the meal, you visit Mira. Her hut is warmer now. The patient is gone, not dead. She says just better enough to be someone else's problem again. She hands you a bundle of herbs and tells you to crush them tomorrow and mix with vinegar. For the sores, she says. You nod. Don't ask who the sores belong to. Everyone has something now. You ask if she's tired. She smiles. Tired means I'm still alive. You walk home with a light heart and damp boots. The stars are brighter tonight. No clouds, no fog. Just clean dark sky and the moon grinning like it knows what you've all been through and is slightly impressed. At the hut, your brother has drawn a chalk face on the wall and named it Sir Cluck. No one knows why. It doesn't matter. The whole family finds it funny, and laughter rings out so loud the goat startles and knocks over the water bucket. You clean it up. You don't even mind. Later, your sister asks you if the goose is coming back. You glance at the door. I think we're safe, you whisper. She nods solemnly and curls up beside you. Within minutes, she's asleep, mouth open, dreaming of things you hope are less muddy than your life. You lie awake for a while, listening to the wind moving through bare branches. It doesn't howl anymore. It hums. Outside, the fields are still a mess. The well is low. The pantry is almost empty. But the fire is warm. The fence is patched. And somewhere out there, something green is growing. A week passes, and the thaw becomes real. Not just patches of dirt here and there, but full stretches of open earth, visible paths, and puddles that shrink rather than spread. You wake up one morning and realize you're sweating. Just a little. Not from fever, not from too many cloaks, but from sunlight creeping through the open shutter. It smells different now. The village, the air, even your own clothes, all tinged with dampness, yes, but also something wilder, something green. You step outside, and the breeze carries the faintest hint of new life, wet soil, thawed moss, and maybe even the ghost of a dandelion. There's a buzz in the village today. A merchant is rumored to be nearby, not the usual half-starved traveler selling threadbare scarves and suspicious cures, but a real merchant one with a cart full of goods from the coast. Salt, they say. Maybe spices, even cloth. You don't believe half of it, but you hope all of it. You head to the square with your family. Everyone is there. The entire village crammed into the muddy space between the chapel and the well, which now gurgles cheerfully like it too survived the winter and wants credit. Then you see it. The cart is real. And so is the merchant dressed in layers of worn velvet, with silver rings on his fingers and a hat far too fine for a man who hasn't trimmed his beard since Advent. His donkey looks like it's seen kingdoms rise and fall, but the cart behind it groans under the weight of actual goods. He calls out prices that make people gasp. He waves fabric like a flag. He offers soap-dried fruit copper pins and miracle salves with names too long to be real. You watch a woman from the next hamlet cry at the sight of a lemon. You have nothing to trade. Not really. Your mother holds a small pouch. with a few leftover coins. She haggles fiercely and returns triumphant with half a skein of blue thread and a tiny sack of salt. It's not much, but it's new, and in a winter where everything stood still new, feels like magic. You help carry it home, careful not to spill a single grain. That afternoon, you help clean, truly clean, not just scraping mud off boots or sweeping ash into a corner, but washing with soap. The tiny bar from the Abbey smells like herbs and sharpness and the promise of spring. You use it sparingly, reverently. Your tunic smells acceptable. Your sister sings as she scrubs the floorboards with a cloth. The goat tries to eat the cloth. You rescue it just in time. The cloth, not the goat. The goat's on its own. Historians still argue whether hygiene in the Middle Ages was universally dreadful or just misunderstood. But today, you scrub your hands with that blessed soap until they smell like thyme and regret nothing. Evening brings something new to warmth, true warmth. You sit outside with your family clustered around a small outdoor fire, enjoying the breeze on your face and the lack of snow under your boots. Your father sharpens a tool. Your mother mends a sleeve. Your brother carves a face into a stick and names it King Pickle. The sun sets slowly like it doesn't want to miss this part. You all stay out longer than usual, just sitting, breathing, existing in a world that isn't trying to kill you every second. Later, back inside, you sit by the hearth and think about the salt, the thread, the lemon someone else got to taste. You think about the sprout in the field, the boy who fell in the puddle, and laughed the monk who brought bread and hope in equal measure. You think about how winter didn't break you. Not really. And that thought warms you more than the fire ever could. You crawl under your blanket, pull it tight, and smile. Because the wind outside is quiet. Because there's bread for tomorrow. Because spring is on its way, and this time you're ready for it. Spring doesn't arrive all at once. It never does. It tiptoes in slow and careful, like it's checking to make sure winter has truly left the building before unpacking its green luggage. The mornings are still cold, but no longer cruel. The frost clings less fiercely, the sun lingers a little longer, and the mud, though persistent, is no longer the kind that tries to eat your boots whole. Today is planting day. Your father wakes you before dawn with a tap on the shoulder and the kind of serious nod usually reserved for funerals or fox sightings. You dress quickly. Your tunic is lighter now, sleeves rolled high. The air bites at first, but your blood moves faster these days. Stronger. You head to the field with your family, tools in hand, baskets of seed. It feels ceremonial, ritualistic, like you're drawing a line in the dirt and daring the world to try again. The field is still soft-pocked with frost scars, but the soil underneath is ready. It breathes as you dig. You sink your fingers into it and feel not just dampness, but potential. You work methodically bending, planting, covering, moving. Your back protests, your knees whine, but you push through. So does everyone. There are no jokes this morning, no songs, just the quiet scrape of hose, the shuffle of feet, and the occasional grunt of encouragement. The work speaks for itself. Around midday, Your mother brings out bread still fresh, the Abbey's generosity lingering, and you eat beside a scarecrow that's already missing a button eye. You offer him a crumb. He's seen things. You drink from a bucket of rainwater and catch your reflection. Dirty, tired, alive. And then, of course, the goose returns. Not a dream, not a ghost. The same goose. You'd recognize that strut anywhere. It honks, once judges your family silently, then waddles into the field like it owns it. Your father chases it off with a rake. Your sister laughs so hard she drops the seed basket. You don't even mind. That afternoon, you plant the last row, your hands sore, your tunic streaked with soil. Your father stands back surveying the plot like it's a kingdom, a muddy, stubborn, beautiful kingdom. You think this is what survival looks like. Not grandeur, just grit and geese. Back in the village, others are doing the same. Fields being turned, fences repaired, roofs rethatched. Children darting between chores like bees that forgot they had wings. You pass Mira's hut and see her outside for the first time in days. She's gathering wild garlic, humming to herself. Her face is still pale, but the tightness is gone. She catches your eye and nods once. Mira made it too. The chapel bell rings, not for mourning this time, but for meeting. A gathering of voices. Plans for the next harvest. A festival even. Nothing grand. Just a fire, some dancing, maybe a roasted turnip or two if the wind is kind. Historians still argue whether joy was common in peasant life or simply hidden beneath layers of hardship. But today, in the faint golden light of dusk, joy doesn't feel rare. It feels earned. You walk home with your family's shoulders aching, but spirits strangely buoyant. Your brother insists he saw a fairy in the hedge. Your father pretends not to hear. Your mother says it was probably just Agnes crouching to retrieve her bonnet. At the hut, the fire crackles. A bowl of thin stew waits now rich with the taste of future rather than just necessity. You lie down under a clean-ish blanket, limb-sore but heart-light. The night air drifts in through the window, no longer sharp, just cool, curious. You listen to the sounds, your father snoring, your sister mumbling in her sleep, the goat outside chewing something that was definitely once part of your sandal, and you smile. Tomorrow there will be more mud, more work, maybe another frost, maybe another scare, but also more planting, more bread, more sky. You close your eyes, knowing this the worst has passed. And you're still here. The fields have begun to whisper again. It's subtle at first, just the wind playing in the fresh shoots, the rustle of green breaking through brown. But to you, it's a song, a secret chant of the earth saying I haven't given up on you yet. Every morning now starts with bird song. You almost forgot what that sounded like. Not the hoarse caws of winter crows, but bright chirps that dart between trees like sparks. Even the rooster sounds more confident these days, as if surviving the cold has made him philosophical. You start your morning with a smile, not forced, not polite, real, because the fields you helped plant have started responding. The barley pokes up in little rows like cautious fingers. The cabbage patch shows tiny leaves. Even the onions, bless their stinking hearts, are trying their best. You weed in silence, the sun warming your shoulders, and let your thoughts drift, not in fear or worry like during the long nights, but in plans. You wonder if the Abbey cart will return soon. You wonder if the merchant might bring seeds next time. You wonder if the goat can be taught not to eat fence posts. Doubtful. Later, you carry water from the well. It's clearer now, fresher, cold still, but not sharp. Your arms ache with the weight, but it's a good ache. The kind that means something is working. That you're working. Your sister skips beside you humming. She carries a small bouquet of wildflowers, crooked and half missing petals, but offered like a royal gift to your mother, who tucks them into a chipped mug on the windowsill and smiles like she's been handed gold. Back inside the hut, the air feels different. Not cleaner exactly, but alive. The damp scent of decay has faded, replaced by the smells of wood smoke, drying herbs, and warm earth. You sweep the floor with purpose. Patch another tear in your father's cloak. Sharpen the blade of the hoe. Everything feels like it has a reason again. In the village square, someone's carved a small maypole. It's not fancy, just a stick in the ground with ribbons tied from frayed cloth. Children dance around it anyway, bare feet, slapping in the mud, laughter echoing through the lanes like a defiant drumbeat. Mira is there too. She's started a small garden behind her hut. Nothing major, just herbs and a few stubborn carrots. She lets your sister water it, watching with a patient eye and a secret smile. That afternoon, Agnes, of all people, stops by your hut. She brings eggs. You're so shocked you forget to speak. She shrugs, mutters something about blessing the new season, and leaves without waiting for thanks. Your mother holds the basket like it's made of crystal. You make a simple omelet. You each get a bite. It's the best thing you've tasted since before the snow. Historians still argue whether village life fostered true community or if necessity simply forced people to tolerate one another. But today, as you sit in the doorway eating a shared meal from shared survival, you know the answer. It's both. Evening brings a soft breeze. You sit outside with your siblings watching the sun bleed across the sky in streaks of pink and orange. The goat dozes at your feet. Your father repairs a wheel. Your mother sings a song you haven't heard in months, the kind that only rises from the chest when the soul feels safe. You look out at the fields, the huts, the chapel bell now silent for a week, no deaths, no tolling, and think about how far you've come, from fever and frost and fear, from nights where the cold crept into your bones like it meant to stay. Now things bloom, not just in the ground, but in you. It's been days since the last illness. That realization hits you at the well one morning as you're lowering the bucket, the rope warm from the sun. You pause and let it swing gently, staring at your reflection in the rippling surface. You're thinner, sure. Your hands are still calloused, your cheeks still ruddy with wind and sun, but you're standing, breathing, smiling, no coughing echoing from huts, no hushed whispers about fevers, no cloths pinned to door frames, just the sound of water splashing in the bucket and a bird singing above your head with reckless joy. You bring the water home and find your mother already baking. Baking. Not boiling, not rationing, not stretching one onion across 3 meals, but mixing flour, working dough with both hands like she's kneading life back into the hut. The flour came from the Abbey. It was part of a second cart that arrived yesterday, pulled by one ox and a monk who smelled faintly of wine and laundry soap. They didn't stay long, but they left enough for every family to bake a single loaf. Your family, of course, divided the flour and stretched it into two, one for now, one for next week. The smell alone is enough to make your eyes water, not from smoke or sickness, but from memory. You eat slowly, reverently, a slice of bread so soft it feels wrong in your hands. Your sister licks her fingers clean and immediately asks if you can bake more tomorrow. You can't, but you let her believe you can. Later, you join the rest of the village for the first outdoor gathering in months. No funeral, no frost warnings, just a shared meal and an excuse to be alive together. Blankets are laid out on the greenest patch of field near the edge of the woods. It's uneven, still muddy in places, but no one complains. Everyone brings what they have. Some bring stews, some bring songs. One boy brings an old fiddle and squeaks out a tune that makes the babies laugh and the elders hum. You sit with your family tearing bread, sipping from a shared jug of watered wine, and watching your neighbors like they're new people. Maybe they are. Maybe grief has peeled something back and left behind a gentler shell. Even Agnes is here. She has a wreath of flowers on her head. She claims it's to keep the sun off, but you suspect she's just letting herself remember who she used to be. At one point, Mira stands up and makes a small toast. To the ones we lost, she says, voice steady, and to the ones who didn't give up. That's all. No sermon, no speech. But everyone clinks cups anyway. You walk home under a sky streaked with gold and soft blue. The kind of evening that feels like it might last forever. The kind of evening that makes the bad ones feel like rumors. Back at the hut, the goat is asleep in the doorway. He snores. You step over him carefully. Inside, your mother is tucking your sister in, humming softly. Your father's already snoring. Your brother is carving something by the fire, another wooden soldier now with both legs. You sit quietly, pulling your knees up to your chest, and watch the embers crackle. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants knew happiness or if they simply survived. But here now, with bread in your belly, the fire warm on your toes, and the night gently pressing its hand to your back, you know the truth. You didn't just survive, you lived. You laugh quietly to yourself because spring has come and you're still here. It's early and the village is still, not from fear, from peace. You wake before the others, the gray-pink light of dawn leaking through the shuttered window. The hearth is out, but your body isn't cold. Not anymore. The blankets are kicked down near your feet. Your sister's arm is flopped over your chest, her mouth open just enough to whistle with each breath. It's ridiculous. It's perfect. You slip out quietly, careful not to wake anyone, and step outside. The air is cool but gentle, the kind of cool that kisses instead of stings. A low mist clings to the grass. In the distance, The chapel bell is silent the way it's supposed to be when no one has died. You wander toward the fields not because you've been told to work, but because something pulls you there. Habit, maybe. Gratitude, probably. The barley has grown noticeably. Tiny green blades stretch upward with the kind of stubborn hope only plants and children possess. You crouch beside a sprout and run your finger along it gently. It bends. It doesn't break. You sit there for a while, legs folded, arms resting on your knees, watching the field wake up. The birds are louder now. Not just one or two. Whole conversations flit between the trees. A lark sings from the chapel roof. You think it might be the same one that disappeared when winter came. You whisper, "Welcome back," just in case it understands. Behind you, the village begins to stir. A pot clangs, a door creaks, laughter bubbles up from somewhere thin at first, then rich. The laughter of people who remember the silence too well not to celebrate the noise. By midday, the village is alive in every corner. Children gather sticks for games. The men argue over fence lines. The women hang linen so bright and clean they almost blind you. Someone paints a flower on the side of their hut in berry juice. It will wash off, but for today, it sings. You help patch the roof of a neighbor's shed, steadying the ladder while your father hammers down the warped boards. Every nail he drives in feels like another line in a sentence the village has been writing since the snow began. A sentence that ends, "We made it." At lunch, you sit outside with your family on the grass, not mud. You eat bread and a soft, crumbly cheese that Mira traded from a traveler who passed through with nothing but goat pelts and the worst jokes you've ever heard. The cheese is divine. The jokes were less so. Your sister holds your hand while she eats, not because she's scared, just because she can. Your mother begins telling a story, one of her old ones before the winter, before the fever, before the chapel sleep. It's about a girl who falls into a well and finds a world where pigs speak Latin and snow melts into gold. Your brother adds sound effects. Your father pretends not to smile. The sun warms your back. A bee buzzes near your ear. You don't even flinch. In the afternoon, you walk with Mira to the edge of the woods to gather wild herbs. The air here smells green, like something freshly written. She hums as she walks, her hands brushing the plants gently as if greeting old friends. You gather thyme, sorrel, wild garlic. She shows you how to pluck them without bruising. As you walk back, Mira says quietly, "Next winter will come too." You nod. "Well, we'll be ready," she adds. And somehow, you believe her. That evening, as the sun dips low and the horizon blushes, the whole village gathers by the well. The priest speaks, but not in sermon, just a thank you for each other, for the abbey, for the earth, even when it hurts. Agnes brings out a pie, a real one. No one asks what's in it. Everyone eats it anyway. It's not about ingredients. It's about sharing. As the stars blink into being, someone brings out a flute. The first note is shaky, the second stronger. By the third, people are swaying. Someone dances. Then two. Then 10. You join them. Bare feet on cool grass arms, loose eyes closed. You dance without rhythm, without thought. without fear. You dance because you're not dead, because the frost melted, because you're here. The next morning, you rise with the sun, not because someone's yelling, not because you're cold, just because you want to. The air in the hut is still and warm. Your sister is curled up in a pile of blankets, clutching her wooden doll, one leg dangling out like she's conquered sleep. Your parents breathe deeply, not urgently, just alive. You step outside barefoot, feeling the cool earth under your soles. It's soft, not frozen, damp but welcoming. You wiggle your toes and grin. You haven't had the luxury of pointless joy in a long time. Today feels like one of those rare days you don't have to survive, you can just be. The village smells like ash and grass and bread baking in a dozen ovens at once. Mira's hut is already smoking her new batch of herbs drying in bundles along the windows. Someone's playing a whistle near the chapel. Badly. You love it. You walk the edge of the field again. The barley has doubled in size since last week. A few stubborn weeds try to invade, but they're no match for your practiced hands. You pluck them out with satisfaction. These rows, these green sprouts, they're yours now. Your sister runs up behind you waving a crown of daisies she made herself. She tries to shove it onto your head. It's lopsided and damp, and you wear it like a king. After breakfast, yes, real breakfast, boiled eggs, and half a heel of sweet bread, you help your mother mend a blanket. Not because it's desperate or fallen apart, but because it's simply time to make things nicer. There's a difference now, a lightness to the work. It's no longer survival stitching, it's care. Later, Agnes stops by. She's brought a bottle of honey. You raise an eyebrow. From the bees, she says, not a bribe. Then she hands you a small scroll of paper. A letter. It's from the Abbey. They're sending another cart. This one with fabric seed grain and, most astonishingly, a traveling scribe. Apparently, the monks have taken an interest in recording the stories of the villages that survived. They want to know what life was like. You laugh. Terrible, you say? But we lived. Agnes nods and mutters something about writing her side of the goose story before you get to it first. A rivalry has begun. You spend part of the day with the scribe when he arrives. He's thin, his robes a bit too clean, his writing hand ink-stained and twitchy. He asked questions in rapid bursts, scratching them down with a quill. You tell him everything, what you ate, what you wore, what the goat chewed. You leave nothing out, especially not the goose. He thanks you with a smile and says, "It's good to have survivors tell the truth." You say truth is messier than parchment. He grins. I hope so. That night, the village hosts another meal, but this time there's music before and after. Someone found a second fiddle. It's even more out of tune than the first, which somehow makes it better. Mira brings out wine, real wine. Where she got it, no one asks. There's dancing again. You dance barefoot this time, crown still perched crookedly on your head, your sister clinging to your back as she shrieks with laughter. The stars glow above, and the wind carries the scent of smoke time and spilled joy. Your father dances with your mother. Your brother tries to copy the monk's steps and ends up in a puddle. Even the priest, cracks a smile so wide it looks like his face might break. As the night winds down, the village gathers one last time near the well. No speeches tonight, just stories, laughter, the kind that bubbles up in waves, the kind that heals and then quiet, not out of fear, just out of fullness. You lie under the stars on the damp grass next to your sister and the goat who will not leave and breathe deeply. You wonder what next winter will be like. You wonder what your story will sound like when told by someone else. But most of all, you wonder how something so brutal, so cold, so relentless could somehow leave behind this life. And just before sleep takes you, you whisper to no one in particular, we didn't just make it through. We remembered how to live. The final days of spring arrive with a hush, not silence, but a kind of soft exhale like the world itself has finally decided to loosen its shoulders and rest for a moment. You wake to the sound of birdsong threading gently through the open window and the breeze smelling less like thaw and more like growing. Grass, flowers, dust warmed by sun. The fields are green now, not hopeful green, but full green, the kind that doesn't need convincing. Rows of barley and beans sway in the morning wind like they're waving hello. The scarecrow, newly patched, leans slightly to the left, but still does his duty, arms open in eternal welcome. You walk the rows barefoot, the soil cool and forgiving beneath your toes. It feels like walking on memory. So many days you stood here with hands chapped from frost and stomach aching from hunger. Now your palms are tough but steady. Your belly is full enough. Your soul sturdy. Back in the village, a woman gives birth. The child cries out strong and loud, a voice declaring itself in a world that very nearly forgot how to welcome new life. You pass the hut later and hear singing, not hymns, lullabies. In the square, a new post has been erected with a bundle of ribbons at its peak. Not a cross, not a warning, just color, movement, joy for its own sake. You help rebuild the wall around the goat pen. The goat escapes anyway, twice. He seems less a menace now and more a companion. A strange, stubborn reminder that some things survive whether you want them to or not. Later, Mira finds you by the well. She's older now. You see it in her eyes more than her face. She asks how the barley looks. You tell her it's going to be strong. You don't even add, if the weather holds. You just know. She places a hand on your shoulder and says, you were different this winter. You nod. You feel it too. Historians may never know your name. You may never be written down in those abbey scrolls with flourished letters or immortalized in stained glass. But you'll be part of this place, etched into the wooden beams of your home, woven into the patched clothes, whispered about in stories by fires long after you're gone. After supper that evening, fresh bread, soft cheese, and a little honey from Agnes, who is now inexplicably keeping bees. Your sister asks if you'll tell a story. You pause, and then quietly, you begin. You tell her about a winter that didn't end, about a village buried in snow and silence, about the sickness and the firelight and the bread that tasted like miracles. You tell her about Marta, not as a witch, but as a healer. You tell her about Mira and the chapel and the first day the snow melted. You tell her about a goose who defied death and a scarecrow that scared no one. You tell her about how you were hungry, scared, and cold, and how you lived anyway. She listens, eyes wide, fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. When you finish, she doesn't speak. She just leans her head against your arm and closes her eyes. Outside, the sky is a warm violet. The moon hangs like a coin dropped into the dusk. The stars blink quietly, gently, patiently. You stretch out beside your sister hand, resting lightly on hers. The wind slips in through the window, soft and full of green things. The world for now is still, and from the ashes of hardship, a new season begins. And now, as you lie back and let the quiet settle into your chest, breathe just a little slower. Let your shoulders soften. You've come so far through the frost, through the silence, through the weight of days that felt endless. But you've reached the other side. The fields are no longer barren. The fire is no longer struggling to stay lit. And the night, though still dark, no longer feels like it's pressing down on you. You are safe now. Let that thought wrap around you like a blanket that's finally been warmed by the heart. Feel the way the earth steadies beneath you. Feel the rhythm of your breath sinking with the rhythm of the wind outside, as gentle as a lullaby. The world will spin forward. The seasons will return. There will be more cold, yes, but there will also be more bread, more dancing, more songs sung by bad fiddlers around shared flames. And you'll still be here. Rest now. There's nothing more to fight today. No chores, no ache, no alarm bells. Just this moment. Just the hush. Let your thoughts slow. Let your body grow heavy. Let your dreams be soft and wide, full of green fields, warm bread, and laughter carried on spring winds. You're not just surviving anymore. You're home. Sleep well, traveler. You made it.